The antique shop was shrouded in shadows. Dust motes danced in the single ray of sunlight that pierced through the gloom. The air was thick with the scent of decay and forgotten things. In the far corner, nestled between a chipped porcelain doll and a tarnished silver candelabrum, stood a mirror. It was tall and narrow, its frame crafted from dark, heavy wood. Strange symbols, their meaning lost to time, were etched into the wood. They seemed to writhe and shift as the light played upon them. The mirror's surface was not glass but polished obsidian, black as night and cold to the touch. A sense of unease emanated from the mirror, a palpable aura of menace that sent shivers down the spine. It felt wrong, as though it were watching, waiting for its next victim. Mr. Gupta, the shop's proprietor, watched Priya from behind the counter. His eyes, rheumy with age, followed her every movement as she approached the mirror. He cleared his throat, the sound raspy and dry. "That mirror," he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. "It is not what it seems." His voice was low, laced with warning. "Best to leave it be." Priya turned, her brow furrowed in curiosity. "What do you mean?" she asked, her gaze flickering back to the obsidian surface. "What's wrong with it?" Gupta hesitated, his gaze troubled. "It is said to steal souls," he finally muttered, his voice barely audible above the rustling of old paperbacks, "to trap them within its depths." Priya scoffed, her initial apprehension giving way to amusement. "That sounds like a load of old wives' tales," she chuckled, shaking her head. "Don't worry, I'm not afraid of a few spooky stories." She reached out, her fingers brushing against the cold obsidian. A shiver ran up her arm, but she dismissed it as a trick of the mind. The mirror was strangely alluring, drawing her in with its dark beauty. "I'll take it," she declared, her voice firm, despite the tremor that ran through her. She ignored the shopkeeper's worried frown, her gaze fixed on the mirror's dark depths. Section 4. Midnight Terror. Priya's bedroom was cloaked in darkness, the only light emanating from the street lamp outside her window. The mirror, now propped against her wall, seemed to drink in the shadows, its obsidian surface gleaming faintly. The silence was heavy, pregnant with anticipation. The clock on her nightstand chimed 12 times, each clang resonating like a hammer blow against the silence. Priya, lying in bed, her eyes fixed on the mirror, felt a prickle of unease crawl up her spine. She watched as her reflection in the mirror, once a perfect mimicry, began to move independently. It blinked slowly, its eyes, now pools of molten gold, boring into her own. A slow, insidious smile spread across its lips, a grotesque parody of her own. Section 5. Trapped. "Hello, Priya," the reflection hissed, its voice a raspy whisper that seemed to slither from the mirror's depths. "We've been expecting you." Priya tried to scream, but no sound emerged from her throat. She tried to scramble back to escape the mirror's hypnotic gaze, but her limbs refused to obey. She was rooted to the spot, frozen in terror. The reflection stretched out its hand, its fingers elongated and skeletal, their touch promising unimaginable cold and pain. Priya thrashed against the unseen bonds that held her captive, her breath catching in her throat. "Don't fight it, Priya," the reflection crooned, its voice a seductive purr. "It's time for you to come home." With a strength that belied its slender frame, the reflection reached out and grasped Priya's wrist. Its touch was icy cold, like death itself. Priya screamed as she was pulled inexorably towards the mirror's surface, her vision filled with swirling darkness. Section 6. The Mirror's Gaze. The mirror stood silently in the dimly lit room, its obsidian surface reflecting nothing but the empty wall behind it. The only sound was the soft ticking of the clock on the nightstand, marking the passage of time. But for those who looked closely, very closely, a faint outline could be discerned within the mirror's depths. A pair of terrified eyes, wide with fear and resignation, stared back. Priya was gone, trapped within the mirror's cold embrace. The mirror held its secret close, its obsidian surface reflecting nothing but the illusion of emptiness. It had claimed another soul, adding Priya's essence to its collection of lost and forgotten things, and it patiently waited for its next victim.